I have often said that the most urgent things in life are rarely the loudest. They do not shout for attention, they whisper. And because they whisper, we tend to overlook them, especially when the world is filled with so much noise, plans, predictions, fears about the future, and promises about what comes next. As a new year approaches, people speak as if time were a great gate about to swing open, as if something decisive will suddenly happen when a number on a calendar changes. But I want to suggest to you that the most important threshold you will ever cross has nothing to do with dates. It has to do with how you see yourself at this very moment. You may feel that you are preparing for what comes next. You may feel you are getting ready for a future that demands improvement, discipline, clarity, or transformation. And yet, all the while, there is a quiet assumption operating beneath these efforts. The assumption that you are not yet enough, that you are not yet whole, that you must become something other than what you already are. This assumption is so deeply embedded in our culture that we rarely question it. We take it for granted, like the air we breathe. But it is precisely this assumption that creates the peculiar tension and anxiety so many people carry into every new beginning. I would like to invite you gently and without urgency to pause before rushing into the next chapter of your life, not to stop living, not to withdraw from the world, but to look more closely at what it is you think you are doing when you try to improve yourself. Because it may be that the one thing you truly need to see before any new year begins is something you have been overlooking all along. One of the strangest habits human beings have is the tendency to treat life as a problem to be solved. We look at ourselves as if we were unfinished projects, machines with faulty parts, or stories with missing chapters. And so we devise strategies, plans for self-control, systems of motivation, ideals of who we ought to be. All of this activity gives us a sense of purpose, and yet it is also the source of a great deal of suffering. From the standpoint of Zen, this is rather like trying to bite your own teeth or see your own eyes without a mirror. The very effort to fix the self assumes a division within you, a controller and the controlled, a judge and the judged. And the curious thing is that this division never resolves itself, because the controller is made of exactly the same stuff as the one being controlled. The thinker who tries to change the mind is itself another thought. This is why so many sincere attempts at self-improvement feel exhausting. You may notice that the more intensely you try to perfect yourself, the more subtle your dissatisfaction becomes. It changes its costume. At first it may appear as obvious anxiety or failure. Later it becomes spiritual restlessness, the sense that you should be calmer, wiser, more awakened than you are. The chase continues, only now it wears sacred robes. But consider this. If you were fundamentally broken, how would you even know what wholeness looks like? If you were truly lost, by what standard would you measure your direction? The very fact that you feel there is something to be realized already implies that you are not as far from it as you imagine. Perhaps what you call seeking is not a journey towards something new, but a circling around something too familiar to notice. In the traditions of the East, there is a recurring metaphor of life as a dance or a play. Not a problem to be fixed, but an activity to be enjoyed. When you listen to music, you do not rush to the final note. The point of the music is not its ending. The point is the listening. And yet, when it comes to our lives, we behave as if the meaning were always deferred, always waiting in the future, after we have achieved enough, understood enough, improved enough. This habit creates a subtle violence against the present moment. We use now as a stepping stone to later. We endure today in the hope of tomorrow. And in doing so, we miss the extraordinary fact that life never actually takes place anywhere else. The future is an idea. The past is a memory. Both appear only in the present as thoughts arising now. This does not mean you should abandon practical planning or responsible action. It means something far more radical and far more gentle. It means recognizing that the fullness you are seeking cannot be postponed. It must be available now, or it will never be available at all. For if you cannot be whole in this moment, what makes you think you will be whole in another? When this is seen, not as a concept, but as a felt recognition, a great deal of unnecessary struggle falls away. You begin to sense that life is not asking you to arrive somewhere else. It is asking you to participate fully and honestly in what is already happening. There is another illusion that quietly governs our experience, and that is the feeling of being a separate observer inside the body, a little thinker behind the eyes who confronts an external world. From this point of view, life appears as something happening to you. Circumstances arrive uninvited, other people interfere. Time pushes you forward, and you are left trying to cope. But this picture is incomplete. It leaves out something essential. When you look closely, you may notice that everything you call the world appears in your experience in exactly the same place as your thoughts, feelings, and sensations. They all arise together in consciousness, the sound of my voice, the feeling of your breath, the idea of tomorrow, the memory of yesterday. None of these are actually outside your awareness. They are events within it. This is not to say that the world is a figment of your imagination in some naive sense. It is to say that the division between inside and outside is not as solid as it seems. You are not a stranger dropped into the universe. You are an expression of it in the same way that a wave is an expression of the ocean. The wave may feel separate, but it is made entirely of the sea. When you begin to feel this even faintly, your relationship to life changes. You no longer experience yourself as a victim of reality, nor as its master. You begin to sense a deeper participation, a kind of intimacy with everything that happens. The world is not confronting you. It is happening with you and as you. Much of our anxiety arises from resistance to this intimacy. We want guarantees, we want control, we want life to behave according to our expectations. And when it does not, we tighten, we defend, we retreat into stories about what should have been. But life, like water, does not cooperate with rigid forms. It flows, it surprises, it escapes our attempts to hold it still. There is a profound freedom in admitting that you do not have to manage the universe. You do not have to supervise your own existence as if it were an unruly child. The heart beats, the lungs breathe, thoughts appear, feelings arise, and you did not plan any of it. And yet here you are, remarkably alive. This does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means shifting from force to trust, from anxiety to curiosity. Instead of asking, how do I control what happens next? You begin to ask, what is happening now and how can I meet it? This is not resignation. It is cooperation with reality as it is. And in this cooperation, you may discover something unexpected. When you stop trying so hard to secure yourself, a deeper sense of security emerges on its own. Not the brittle security of certainty, but the flexible security of belonging to the process of life itself. As we approach any new chapter, whether called a year or something else, there is a temptation to make vows against ourselves. We resolve to be less fearful, less distracted, less imperfect. But notice how often these resolutions are driven by a subtle dislike of who you are now. They carry an undertone of self-rejection. Transformation that grows out of rejection rarely brings peace. It produces tension, inner conflict, and a constant sense of falling short. But transformation that grows out of understanding is entirely different. When you see clearly how a pattern works, how fear arises, how habits repeat, how desires form, you do not need to force change. Insight itself begins to dissolve what is unnecessary. This is why awareness is so often described as awakening. You are not becoming someone else. You are waking up from the idea that you were ever separate, incomplete, or fundamentally flawed. You are waking up from the notion that life is a test you must pass, rather than a mystery you are invited to explore. And this awakening does not happen all at once, like a dramatic explosion. More often it happens quietly in small recognitions. A moment when you notice yourself reacting and smile, a moment when you allow uncertainty instead of fighting it, a moment when you feel gratitude without a reason. There is a deep irony in the way we prepare for the future. We imagine that by tightening our grip now, we will be more relaxed later. But the habit of tension carries forward. If you live today as a rehearsal for tomorrow, tomorrow will become another rehearsal for the day after. The promised moment of arrival never comes. The alternative is not recklessness, but presence. To give your full attention to what you are doing now, not as a means to an end, but as an end in itself. When you walk, simply walk. When you listen, simply listen. When you plan, plan. But do not imagine that planning will deliver you from the uncertainty that is inherent in being alive. Uncertainty is not a mistake in the design of existence. It is the space in which creativity appears. If everything were known in advance, life would be mechanical. There would be no discovery, no surprise, no play. The unknown is not an enemy. It is the very condition that allows anything new to happen. When you befriend this uncertainty, the future loses its power to intimidate you. You may still care about what comes next, but you no longer feel haunted by it. You are rooted where you are, and from that root, you can respond intelligently to whatever arises. Many people ask, often without words, "What is my purpose?" They imagine purpose as a specific task assigned to them by fate or God or the universe. And because they cannot find a clear answer, they feel lost. But consider the possibility that purpose is not something you discover like a hidden object. It is something you express moment by the way you participate in life. A flower does not search for its purpose, it blooms. A bird does not consult a manual on meaning, it sings. Their purpose is not separate from their activity, and in the same way your purpose is not waiting somewhere in the future after sufficient preparation. It is already taking shape in the way you speak, listen, work, rest, and relate. When you stop asking life to justify itself, it begins to feel meaningful on its own. Meaning is not imposed from outside. It emerges from involvement, from caring, from paying attention, from allowing yourself to be fully here, without the constant demand that the moment be something other than what it is. As a new year approaches, there may be a quiet fear beneath the excitement, a sense that time is running out, that opportunities are slipping away, that you must hurry to become what you are meant to be. But this fear rests on a misunderstanding. Time is not a conveyor belt carrying you toward a final judgment. It is a rhythm, a pulse, an unfolding. You are not behind. You cannot be behind. There is no schedule you have failed to meet. Life is not comparing you to anyone else. It is simply expressing itself as you in this particular form at this particular moment. And that expression is neither late nor early. It is timely by definition. When you see this, the urgency softens. You may still feel energy, enthusiasm, the desire to explore and create. But it is no longer driven by fear. It is driven by curiosity and delight. You are no longer trying to outrun time. You are dancing with it. So before any new beginning is declared, before any resolutions are made, I invite you to consider this one simple recognition. You do not need to become someone else in order to live fully. You do not need to wait for a future version of yourself to arrive. The life you are looking for is not ahead of you. It is happening now, as the sound you hear, the thought you think, the breath you take. When this is seen, even imperfectly, the great burden of self-improvement lightens. You may still grow, still learn, still change, but you will do so as a play of life, not as a project of self-correction. You will move forward without the sense that something essential is missing. And perhaps that is the most important thing to realize before any year begins. That you are not on your way to life. You are in it. You always have been. And the moment you stop postponing your own presence, you may discover that there was never anything else you needed to find.